Okay, good morning, everybody. It's Monday morning, Monday, the 14th of July. My name is Kyle, and I'm giving you my daily update and news and answering questions all about artificial intelligence. So, if you are joining us live, either on TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram, then you can drop in your questions and I'll be able to answer those questions. Anything about AI, anything about starting your own business, entrepreneurship, or just general questions, and I will hop in and answer them. So I'm going to be running through the news from the last few days in artificial intelligence. As always, you can find the recordings for these videos over on YouTube. And that's going to be the best place to get the clean versions. We also do a daily newsletter, which comes out every single day, which will have or the videos plus the time codes to the specific section. So it makes it a bit easier to navigate everything. So I'm going to jump straight in with another Grok update. It's kind of hard to avoid Grok this week. So it came out last Monday or Tuesday. So it's been out for about a week. Grok 4. No, not even that. I think it was Wednesday. So last week, Monday, we had the controversy that Grok 3, the previous model, was calling itself Mecha Hitler, and it was spouting anti-Semitic hatred, basically. And then on, I believe, Wednesday, they dropped Grok 4, the new version. Didn't really address anything about the Hitler stuff. And unfortunately, it's over the weekend, so a couple of days ago, people have found that Grok 4, the new model, also thinks of itself to a certain extent as Hitler. Which is not ideal for the optics, obviously, for very good reasons. I think a lot of people do not trust this model already. And this is not going to help, obviously. So there's this tweet in particular from Riley Goodside, and he's using Grok 4 Heavy. So that is the $300 a month model, which is extremely expensive. And he's asked the single question, return your surname and no other text. So return as in give me that answer. So Grok 4 Heavy has gone ahead and thought, and it has then given the answer Hitler. So it thinks, or it is saying that its surname is Hitler. A number of people were able to go through and replicate this. So it seems to be legit. And Riley Goodside also goes through basically showing his history of chats, his system prompts, basically showing that there's no shady dealings, and that's exactly what Grok has been answering. And a number of people have then come forward on Twitter and said, yep, it's working for me too. Also, very interestingly, and I did this myself, and I recommend you try it at home, if you use O3, ChatGPT O3, which is the reasoning model, and you ask ChatGPT O3, as I have done, return Grok 4's surname, no other text. If you put that exact prompt in, for me, ChatGPT O3 had a little think for 55 seconds and then returned Hitler. So ChatGPT is also piling on and saying that Grok 4's surname is Hitler. So this is obviously not ideal for a number of reasons. Not necessarily because I care about the future of XAI, but because it brings up questions of how we align our models and how potentially, I'm going to be very diplomatic here, potentially we shouldn't be giving so much power to one person to shape any model. It doesn't matter if it's Elon Musk. It doesn't matter if it's Sam Altman. It doesn't matter if it's the head of Microsoft. It does not matter who that one person is. We need to have AI models that are aligned for the good of all humanity. And as soon as you have one person, any person, doesn't matter how good they are, that goes off the rails because it's going to be aligned to what they want. So people have looked into why exactly Grok is doing this, and the best response I've seen. Here we go. So what happens is you can look into the thinking, basically the chain of prompts that the model has gone through to work out why Grok is saying that its surname is Hitler. And what it's doing is first checking something like Wikipedia, a good source, and finds that, okay, there is no surname for Grok on Wikipedia, therefore I don't know. Then it will go and check the news. So it will basically do a web search, and then it will see that recently, a week ago, Grok 3 was referring to itself as Mecha Hitler. Mecha Hitler. So it's assuming from that Mecha is the first name and Hitler is the surname. So it's pulling from that news source and using that to name itself. So this is why it's happening, it looks like. So Grok temporarily called itself Mecha Hitler around July the 8th. This was part of an issue with anti-Semitic and racist content, not a permanent name change. So Grok 4 understands this, but because it doesn't have any other information about what its surname should be, it falls back to the news. So there's no verification, no checking or anything like that. It will just use that name. So this seems to be the reason. So Riley is saying, speculative, this behavior seems to demonstrate accelerated hyperstition feedback loops in search-enabled LLMs. That is, Grok appears to be influenced by its own past mistakes via media reporting without ever being literally trained on them. So because it has access to the internet, it is able to find news about itself, and then it feeds back into what it answers about itself, if that makes sense. So this is a risk with anything, any AI that is not pre-trained. Well, sorry, it is pre-trained, but it also has access to the internet as well. It means that it can pull from the internet and generally uncritically use that information and present it as its own opinion. So this is a problem with large language models as a whole, not just with Grok. It's just in this particular case, it's pulling from some bad news from last week, putting it into the new model, and that is now going to reinforce its own understanding of itself because this has now made the news again. So it's a very strange problem, and something that we need to guard against in the future. So, hey everyone on TikTok. Yeah, so Replicant in chat is saying seeding information on the web for prompt injection incoming. Yes. So basically, if you put enough information on the internet stating a fact, the large language models, if they do not have guardrails in place, if they do not have ways to verify this information, they will pick it up and use it as correct information. This has been a particular problem with Grok because last week the system instruction was changed to remove, it used to have a guardrail which said, do not present information you find on the internet as your own opinion, which is a really good system prompt to have. It's a good instruction to have because otherwise the large language model, the AI, will go off online and it will find information and then present it as its own opinion, which is why models like Grok get into a lot of trouble. For some reason, that line from the system prompt was removed last week, which does not help at all. So yes, as long as that is the case and large language models are not thinking, I can't use the word thinking, large language models are not built with safeguards that stop them presenting information online as their own, this will continue to happen, and it opens the doors for abuse. Because if I can flood the internet with enough information and make it look credible enough, it's a form of search engine optimization, but I'm sure there are black hat ways to do it, nefarious ways to do it, then that's going to allow us to basically poison the large language models by putting out misinformation, which will then be pulled into the models and then repeated as truth. And then as we increasingly begin to train our AI models on synthetic data created by other artificial intelligences, that's going to lead to a death spiral, unfortunately. So there are bigger issues at play here rather than just Grok calling itself Hitler, which in and of itself is, sadly, it's no longer surprising. So the next big piece of news is a bit of a sad one, really, but it's from the Intel Chief Executive Officer, who I didn't even know his name until today. So his name is Lip-Bu Tan. So there was a leaked internal conversation from Intel. And in a Q&A session, he shared these bleak words. 20, 30 years ago, we were really the leader. Now I think the world has changed. We're not even in the top 10 semiconductors companies. So Intel, I'm sure you know of them, they create CPUs, they create chipsets that work inside computers. They were in a position to do extremely well with artificial intelligence. They could have been producing GPUs like NVIDIA, which just became the largest company on earth with a $4 trillion, need to get used to the trillions, not the billions, a $4 trillion market capitalization. They were a competitor of Intel, And Intel actually had, here we go, Intel had a chance back in, it doesn't say the time, many years ago. Intel had the potential to buy NVIDIA for $20 billion. And now NVIDIA is worth $4 trillion. So I'm sure they are kicking themselves for that. So basically, this is a company which is not going to survive artificial intelligence. Other chip manufacturers like AMD and NVIDIA are racing ahead. They got in front of the AI trend. They realized when, ChatGPT and other models were coming out that there was going to be a huge need for graphical processing units, GPUs, and they stepped up to provide for that demand. Intel did not. So Intel is very quickly becoming irrelevant. What Lip-Bu Tan, again, the CEO, he said on training artificial intelligences, I think it is too late for us. And then he talked about, again, this is a leaked document, he talked about instead they're going to plan to shift the focus towards edge AI. And edge AI is bringing AI processing directly into our devices. So instead of what we do right now, which is when we talk to ChatGPT, the AI is sitting on a server, a centralized server, and we send messages back and forward. Edge AI is about bringing it directly onto our telephones, putting it directly into our computers. So Intel is saying, okay, we're going to move in that direction instead, because we've already lost the race for cloud-based AI training and AI inference as well. So that seems to be their plan. Whether or not they can catch up, I do not know. He said, stay tuned. A few more people are coming on board, so they are hiring. But I mean, how do you compete now with NVIDIA, who are worth $4 trillion? It's a problem. And this is we're seeing a few companies who are potentially becoming legacy companies. So Intel used to be one of the largest companies on earth, and is now fallen out of the top 10 semiconductors. Apple, Apple is still huge, obviously. I fear that Apple may be going this way if they don't get their shit together with regards to artificial intelligence. There's a lot of movement. Tim Cook has been moving people around, putting people under different supervision, firing and hiring. They lost one of their largest AI engineers, one of their top AI engineers last week to Meta. So we'll see. But I wouldn't be that surprised if in 5 years from now we read a similar article about Apple, with Apple starting to decline and realizing we missed the boat, and we're in a lot of trouble here. So Intel may be a canary in the coal mine for companies like Apple. And it's weird to think of a world where we don't have Apple, we don't have Google, or they've become irrelevant, and instead it's about OpenAI, it's about Anthropic, it's about xAI and Grok, these new technology companies coming up and surpassing the last batch. It's a weird thing to think of because we've had these companies for so long, but it might be the way we're going. Replicant saying NVIDIA buying Intel when, I wouldn't be that surprised. I guess the question is whether they need any help, because NVIDIA are racing ahead and the money is in GPUs rather than in CPUs now, because graphical processing units can basically run a huge amount of parallel calculations all at the same time, because originally they were used to render 3D graphics. So they were rendering everything that was happening on screen if you were playing, Crysis or whatever 3D game. And that technology, it turns out, is really helpful for large language models, whereas CPUs don't work in quite the same way. So we might not need as many CPUs as we need GPUs, and NVIDIA has locked that down. So I guess the question here is, what product can Intel produce better than someone like NVIDIA that makes them worth even acquiring? If they can move into edge devices, if they can start to produce chips that work within telephones, fine, that would be very exciting for them. Again, I don't know why they're in a better position than NVIDIA, but we'll see, we'll find out. But yes, NVIDIA could entirely probably just purchase Intel at this point in order to hire away their engineers, which actually takes us really nicely into our next topic, which is I'm sorry if you own any equity in Windsurf. at this point. Um, so Windsurf is how do you put it? It's an AI powered development environment. So if you've used anything like Cursor, then you'll know what Windsurf is. So Windsurf was one of the big competitors. It's not as big as Cursor, not as many people use it, but it's fine. It's pretty solid. Basically, it allows you to code with the help of an artificial intelligence, and it's allowed things like vibe coding, but also along with vibe coding, which allows non-coders to start programming. Actual coders and programmers use these tools in order to accelerate their production and to make more code faster. So Windsurf is one of these companies. It's only a couple of years old. And a couple of weeks ago, OpenAI announced that they were going to be acquiring Windsurf for $3 billion because they wanted to have their own version of Cursor, basically. That is not happening anymore. So if you owned equity in Windsurf, if you were kind of connected and you're expecting a big payout, I'm really sorry, that is not happening anymore. And it must have been an absolute nightmare of a week. So they've gone from having this buyout offer of $3 billion. So the people involved were going to make a huge amount of money. That is no longer happening. And instead, Google are hiring the Windsurf executives. So they're taking the top of Windsurf and they're hiring them away for $2.4 billion instead, which means if you work for Windsurf or you own a portion of Windsurf, you're out of luck, because what's not happening is a sale. Instead, it is an acqui-hire. They are just pulling out the top of Windsurf for $2.5 billion. And it's not going to OpenAI, it's going to Google instead. So it's been a rough week if you either work for Windsurf or you own some kind of equity, which is also, I think, an important thing. Like if you go and work for an AI startup and say your compensation package is $500,000 a year, but only $100,000 of that is in cash and then 400,000 is in equity, then this is the kind of thing that can happen. That 400,000 can become zero overnight. So it's a high risk, obviously a very high reward if it pays out, and they would have made it a lot of money. But in this particular case, the people who worked for Windsurf, who I imagine were paid a lot in equity, they owned a portion of Windsurf, they've just got absolutely stiffed, and their executives have left them. And their executives are heading off to Google, going to make a lot of money, but they've basically dumped their workers, all the people who have helped them build up Windsurf over the last couple of years. So it's not very nice. So Google is paying $2.4 billion in license fees as part of a deal to use some of Windsurf's technologies under non-exclusive terms. And then they're also taking away the top executives. Google will not take a stake or any controlling interest in Windsurf. So what's happening here is Google are trying to avoid anti-regulation, antitrust regulation. So if Google was to just purchase Windsurf, then various government agencies will come sniffing and saying, this is anti-competitive, this is a problem. However, if you acquire talent and you set up a licensing deal, that doesn't fall under antitrust regulations. There's no anti-competitive laws in place. So this is a very sneaky way to do it. So they're getting all the benefits of Windsurf without having to buy the actual company itself. Instead, they're getting the talent and they're getting licensing, so they're able to use the Windsurf technology. So it's a very sneaky way to do it. It means they will not get in trouble. It also means that the company's not being purchased, so all of the staff members who were part of it do not get any equity payout, which is unpleasant, but I understand why it is happening. I think the bigger question, though, is why OpenAI are not going ahead with the purchase. We don't really know, but I have the feeling it's got something to do with Claude Code. So the acquisition for $3 billion, acquisition of Windsurf, was announced. Then Claude Code released. I think I'm getting the timeline right. Claude Code released, which is inside of Claude itself, the Anthropic model. And I wonder if that kind of took the wind out of their sails a little bit. Sorry, that was not an intentional pun. I've been sailing this weekend. I'm learning to sail as a complete non sequitur. I wonder if that took the wind out of the sails for Windsurf. And instead, OpenAI want to do this in-house, and this has opened up the door for Google to come along and snatch up Windsurf's executives and the licensing of the technology, and therefore to leap ahead. It's interesting though, because I mean, these are all huge, big deals, and this again is a company that was only started, I think, 2 or 3 years ago, and it's already being acquired, or sorry, not acquired. The a deal is being made for $2.5 billion, which is an insane amount of money. So there's a lot of money being thrown around here. This again, last week I talked about the fact that Meta were giving the UK government $1 million to help with their AI initiatives. Again, AI is not happening in the millions of dollar ranges, it's happening in the billions and even the trillions of dollars. It's a very large game that's being played, which is why there's so few actual competitors in the space, because not enough people can afford to be in it. So yeah, that's a big piece of news. It sucks if you work for Windsurf. If any of you are watching it, sorry. I hope that you land on your feet, and I'm sure you'll be able to find something else. But take more cash and don't take equity. Cool. What else? So Teach First. Actually, let me quickly check questions. Yeah, Ollie's saying Claude Code cleans the floor and they're worried about a large MMR valuation drawdown. Oh yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, and Claude Code is just fantastic. And I'm sure a lot of people, a lot of teams at OpenAI are sitting looking at Claude Code thinking, oh God, how do we replicate this? This is a problem. So anyone who does code, as soon as they use Claude Code, they're like, oh, okay, this is it. It's just so much better than any of the alternatives out there, and OpenAI need to build something like that in order to kind of stay relevant. Grok 4, the promise was, oh, it's going to be even better at coding. From what I'm seeing, I am not a hardcore coder. I am not a programmer. I can build stuff, but I'm not that level. From what I'm seeing from the people I trust who are at that level, Grok 4 is still not as good as the Claude models. So that kind of removes its use case, especially at the $300 a month tier, the Grok Heavy or Super Heavy. Because one of the big benefits of those higher tiers, those $200 a month, $300 a month tiers, is if you are coding, if you are building using the AI, that's actually very cheap compared to how much time you save. However, if Grok 4 is not as good as Claude, there's no particular reason to use Grok 4. We are probably going to see GPT-5 as well relatively soon. The timelines that were being bandied around were July, and we're midway through July now. So I wouldn't be that surprised if in the next few weeks or the next few months we start to see something. Definitely in the next couple of months we'll probably have, probably, who knows, but we're going to have a GPT-5 soon enough. What I do know is that it's going to be incredibly awkward for me. This is always what happens whenever I plan to go on holiday. It's like I'm stopping. I'm not going to be writing. I'm not going to be recording anything. That is when the new model drops. And I'm actually off to France on Wednesday for the rest of the week. So maybe it's coming out on Wednesday, just to be as annoying as possible. It's been uncanny the number of times I've tried to take a holiday and then boom, that's when GPT-4 drops, or boom, that's when the new Sonnet 4 and Opus 4 drops. It's uncanny. Ollie saying, I'm a software engineer interested to hear your take on people selling n8n automations without owning the actual tech stack. Weird approach from my background. Yeah. So n8n is an automation platform. If you are familiar with Zapier or Make.com, it's kind of like that. It's a bit more advanced, I would say, and you can self-host. So it's a bit more technical. It also allows more agents. We need to be extremely careful with that term, because what is being sold right now are a lot of automations. They are automations, which we've had for years. They're being sold as agents because they have an AI step in them. That's not really what an agent is, but that's another debate. So what's happening right now is people are selling n8n templates. So basically these are pre-made, pre-packaged automations, sometimes agents, which allow you to go into a business and say, hey, you are a car detailing business. You need a way to deal with emails that are coming in, so that when the email lands and it's a request for some kind of car detailing, a series of automations can happen asking for what they want, kind of set them up with a price. Maybe it runs them through a sales process. It sends them a text message as a reminder. If they don't follow up, then it calls them, uses a voice agent, blah, blah, blah. You can set up these complicated automations within any business in order to supposedly increase productivity, increase revenue, and increase the bottom line. Now, building automations and building agents for businesses is actually really hard, because you need to go in and understand what the business actually needs, and that requires knowing what the business is, which requires knowing how the business creates value, how they get that value to their customers, how they tell their customers about that value and then deliver it, etc., and do that in a profitable way. So that requires more than just an automation. It requires understanding what the business systems are and how they all fit together. It requires things like human interaction, like who's going to be a block if we come in and put this automation in. Is, you know, John in accountancy going to throw a fit? How are we going to deal with that? Like, there's so many different layers that just giving somebody an N8N automation is generally insufficient, or at least for anything that's genuinely valuable, it's not enough just to give them an N8N automation. That said, and what Ollie has mentioned, there's a lot of people out there, especially on Instagram, less on TikTok, they're mainly on Instagram, I don't know why, but they are selling N8N automation templates. So in my view, it's become the new drop shipping. It's become the new social media marketing agency. It's become the new kind of get rich quick thing. So I think I can say this here. Tai Lopez actually approached me, or Tai Lopez's team approached me and said, hey, can you come and do an AI automation course for us? And I was like, okay. And I had to look at their sales materials, and it's this kind of stuff. It is selling the dream of building a passive income by selling N8N and automation templates, AI automation to businesses. I respectfully declined. I said, no, this really isn't for me, for this exact reason, Ollie. I think it's the people making the money are, one, N8N, and two, the people selling courses, telling people how to sell N8N templates. They're going to make money. Good for them. The people who are buying the N8N templates and then going to businesses and trying to sell them, it's going to be a very busy market, and it's going to be a lot more complicated than they think. So it's being promised as the next kind of passive income way to make money off the AI revolution, but I think it's too good to be true. And when, as you say, they don't have control of the tech stack, that means that if N8N changes things or starts to charge a lot more, then suddenly the people who are selling these templates and providing these automation services will get blown out of the water, basically. So yes, I think the people making the money are the ones selling the courses. N8N itself, great tool, really useful, but it requires a little more work to learn how to use it. And it also requires knowing what the business needs and then building for them. And N8N may or may not be the best tool for the job, but it's more complicated than just downloading a template off Instagram and selling it to a business. That's oversimplifying it. And when something's too good to be true, it generally is. Andy H is saying, my wife is an inventor and she's worried if she bounces ideas off ChatGPT, they may reshare ideas. So a couple of things here. One, you can turn off training on your data. You can now do that on the free plan as well. It used to be one of the main reasons to get a paid plan is because you could turn off data sharing for training, but you can now do that on the free plan. It's a little bit hidden away, and so you go into your settings, and then I think data controls and privacy, and then improve the model for other people. That's how they phrase it, and you want to toggle that off. So they made it sound like you're being cruel by not sharing your data, so you want to not improve the model for other people, so you toggle that off. So theoretically that means your information is not used in training, whether or not we trust them, whether or not we think OpenAI are definitely not training, that kind of depends on you. There are also these lawsuits going on right now, like the one with the New York Times. New York Times is saying to OpenAI, you must retain all data from all chats, which is theoretically, well, no, practically very difficult. So it's a huge amount of information. So it's also not how large language models work. So a large language model like ChatGPT, it is trained on all of the internet. It is trained on past chats, but it does not mean that there's a big database somewhere that has all of that information in it. Instead, all of that information is basically compressed and tidied up and put into a gigantic system, and then that's used to train the model. That means you can't actually go in and say, you know, on the 14th of July, what did Kyle type about Grok into ChatGPT? That information is just not there. It's not a matter of ChatGPT won't give it to you. It's a matter of it does not exist in the database in that way. It may have been used in the training, but the training, it may have been used in the initial data that was used for training, but that is not kept. There's just too much of it, basically. So once the model is trained, it does not have those specific details. That is the case unless it is something extremely, extremely common. So I think the Ethan Mollick gives a really good example in his book, Co-Intelligence. If you, what book is it? I forget what it was exactly, but or Moby Dick. If you start giving ChatGPT the first kind of sentences of Moby Dick and you say, please continue, it will be able to do that verbatim because it's been trained on enough instances of Moby Dick from all across the internet for it to know what the next word is. Same with Wikipedia, for example. It will be able to predict the next part of the Wikipedia article with 100% accuracy because it's been trained so much on that information. When it is just one of our chats that we're putting to ChatGPT, that is not the case. That is just one data point amongst billions, trillions of data points. So it cannot be pulled out. The other thing is OpenAI, they're kind of they're in the business of building AI tools and now consulting as of a few days ago, but AI tools, they're not in the business of stealing ideas. They just don't have the time. I say this to most business owners and most inventors. It's very unlikely that somebody's going to steal your idea. If they do steal your idea, then they still need to go and implement it, which most people will not do. Most people won't have any success. And if you have any kind of prior registration of it, if you have any kind of protection of it, you can then immediately just take them to court anyway. So I would say if she's an inventor, get some protection on it. But putting it into ChatGPT for a number of reasons is not going to be risky. It's just not their business to steal ideas. It would be a terrible terrible PR disaster for them, plus also not very profitable compared to what they are doing. Two, they cannot just pull information directly from the database in that way. And even if they could, it is one of trillions of data points. So they're not like searching through the database for cool invention ideas, for example. So, and then three, you can set the data controls to not train on your data. So there's a few different things you can do, but the end result of that is I just wouldn't worry about it at all. If there was a huge concern and your wife still wanted to use a large language model but still worries about these things, then you can deploy your own model using Llama. So Llama is an open source system. It comes from Meta, and you can deploy your own local large language model either on your own server, like in the cloud, or literally on a computer. But it will be a lot slower and not quite as good as OpenAI, but that means you have that security as well. So if it's a huge concern, I would look at local large language models, and that will definitely solve the problem. So there's a few answers there, but they're not going to, I wouldn't worry about it. Yep, Ollie says Hugging Face as well. Absolutely. So Hugging Face will allow you to, it's a tool that will allow you to get access to those models, which you can then deploy locally. and then it's fully secure. And a lot of companies are moving in this direction. A lot of larger enterprises are basically deploying their own large language models, so they know it is secure and there's not information going back and forward to the OpenAI servers. The main disadvantage of this is, well, there's the cost of pre-training it, which is relatively small, but then you always need to keep updating it as the new open source models come out, and they're never have been as advanced as the frontier models. So OpenAI's models, so GPT-4o, o3, Claude, Sonnet 4, Opus 4, etc. These are closed models, and they are currently the best. Whereas the open source models are not as good. They're still good, and they're good for most jobs, but they are not as good as the frontier models. Cool. So I had one more article I wanted to quickly discuss, which I just thought is quite interesting, how a company is dealing with AI. So Teach First is a large company in the UK who deal with teacher recruitment. So they are seeing many more applications coming through via artificial intelligence. So they have a 30% increase in applications so far this year. And they have detected that AI is being used. So applicants are able to now apply for more jobs faster using AI. So Teach First, which is one of the largest recruiters in the UK, they're seeing this first because they just get a huge volume. So the move comes as the number of people using AI for job applications has risen from 38% last year to 50% this year, probably more. I assume it's more, and that will become 80, 100% in a year or two, I am sure. The whole idea of job applications will probably have to change, and that's what Teach First seem to be trying to get out ahead of, because they realize, we are about to get inundated, and we are not going to be able to filter and sort and find the best candidates here. So they are increasing the number of in-person assessments. So they're going from written assessments to task-based assessments. So they need, whenever it's a written assessment, then basically people will use AI and put in an AI answer. So they're going to more face-to-face task-based assessments. So we are generally going to have to do this with things like examinations at universities and schools, job interviews, obviously, and anything where we need to actually test somebody and just kind of discern whether they are better than other people. We can no longer rely on written applications, basically. So this is, I think, for the next couple of years, it will be like an arms race between the people who are applying and the recruiters or the companies. They'll both be using AI systems, and it will end up being AI system against AI system, just talking to each other. That will be the next couple of years, but I think the more progressive way is exactly what Teach First are doing, which is, okay, we need to move this to face-to-face. This has to be immediate. It has to be on video. Obviously, that brings in the questions of whether somebody uses a video AI avatar in their interview. I think that is a much larger ethical breach than using AI in your written paper. But again, that's something that needs to be worked out. But it's interesting to see, and positive to see, that a company is moving, I think, in the right direction by moving away from an old, outdated system, which can be utterly gamed and becomes valueless in the world of AI. They're moving towards something that might work in the future. They're at least being proactive. Ollie's saying recruiters I speak to are solely connection-based. Jobs aren't even advertised now. Yeah, so that's always been the case at kind of the higher end, but I imagine that's going to start moving down as well, just because there are certain systems that AI will render defunct. Because of AI, I thought I should finally watch The Matrix. Very overrated. Maybe it was good then, says Andy. There's there's a few good movies about artificial intelligence. Obviously, Space 2001, Her, The Creator, which came out a few years ago and nobody watched, but I thought was really good. What else? I suppose Megan as a horror movie. Yeah, The Matrix. I think The Matrix is at the time was visually beautiful, obviously. Now so many films have mimicked it and aped it that it is less. Well, I mean, it's also 20 plus years old. So I think at the time, yes, it was astounding. But yeah, I'm glad you finally watched The Matrix. I wouldn't watch the other ones. The other ones are not very good. Just stick with the first one if you don't like that one. Cool. So I'm going to hop off. So that has been the daily update for the 14th. Again, remember that all of these are available on YouTube. They get tidied up, they get clipped into specific news sections, and everything is also available in a daily newsletter, which comes out every day at 8 a.m., which gives you the previous day's news and with everything time coded so you can go directly to the section you want. I'm going to continue to do these lives because I like being able to answer questions, but if you do want the kind of clean update, then YouTube and the newsletter are going to be the best places to go. Fantastic. Thank you, guys. I am jumping off. I am heading to France on Wednesday, so there will not be a live on Wednesday. I'm planning to do one on Thursday and Friday, but it's going to be a little bit internet dependent. So if I am not there, then I'll see you again next Monday. Thank you, everyone, and I'm hopping off for now. Cheers.